Hello, everybody. My name is Gary London. I am Senior Principal of London Moeder Advisors, a real estate economists and consultants here in San Diego, California. And I want to do a brief video today on what I'm just going to call demographics part 2. I talked recently in a video about the implications of aging baby boomers to our society, particularly on housing costs and on the shape and the look of cities in the future. And today, what I want to focus on is the implications of a society that is having less children. And I want to start this out by suggesting that it's not just our society, not just this nation, not just the regions that we live in, that's facing issues regarding a lower population level. It's the entire globe. I think the poster child for this is China, which is projecting over the next 2 or 3 decades a reduction in population of from 1.2 billion persons to order of magnitude 800 billion persons. So what caused this? Well, probably the combination of lower fertility rates, but also national policy stemming from, I guess, a couple of decades ago, where the government required that families only have one child. And that now has sort of bubbled throughout the years into this reduction and increasing prospective reduction of the amount of children per household. And that has huge implications on their country, particularly their economy, which is only sustainable by at least the maintenance, if not the increase of their population levels. And of course, China is a country that doesn't enjoy immigration or immigration pressures like the United States does. I mean, what I always remind people is that in this fight that we have over immigration along our southern border, between the political policies and this, and all the various arguments associated with how to clean that up, make it better, prevent it, whatever your policy focus is. At least we have a country that people want to come into. That's not the case in places like China or places like Russia, whose current population is also in significant decline. And this is more or less the case in most first and second world countries around the nation. And the United States is not immune to this. We are actually facing a similar situation where we're expecting our population counts to go down. And it's so interesting, and I was telling my 14-year-old son this the other day, it's so interesting that when I was a young adult, in college and coming out of college, the popular sort of mantra that was reflected in the media and books that were written at the time was that we have a population explosion. I remember Ehrlich and others, arguing the fact that the very preservation of our planet would be associated with our need or our ability to reduce our actual population levels on the globe. And so fast forward, here we are, some 4 or 5 decades later, and I'm no longer hearing arguments about population explosion or overpopulation on the globe, in our nation, in our communities. Now what we're really talking about is what are the implications associated with the reduction in population in all of these places. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about regionally here in San Diego, and for that matter, all of Southern California, how there is a great amount of out-migration, more people leaving than coming in, or that we're able to replace through more babies being born than dying, natural increase, or even through international immigration. All the numbers are down, causing the overall population levels to reduce. And that has huge implications, which reverberates in our economy. On a national level, what really piqued my interest to sort of do this video today is that the Social Security system actually is getting a sort of a pass for a couple of years, in that the projections are that the Social Security system is pretty much secure for a couple more years than were previously projected, that we really don't go south in terms of our ability to sustain Social Security payments until 2035, where the previous projection was 2033. I don't know that makes me feel that much better, because inevitably, as politicians continue to kick the can down the road as to how we're going to deal with Social Security and our ability as a nation to keep the promise as people get into their retirement years, or at least into their aging years, that they're going to be subsidized by the nation, which is something that we've had, since since the Roosevelt administration, and that continues to be a concern, even though that Canton has been kicked down the road at least a couple of years. So there are implications on a national level with respect to how do we fund Social Security. Of course, that's coupled with the fact that people are living longer, so people are going to be taking payments out of the system for longer. But that bleeds down into the issues that we're all going to have to face as a national society, as local society, with respect to how are we going to come to terms with the fact that as our population levels are projected to decrease, how do we continue to sustain our businesses and our economies and our system of government, in the sense that people who pay taxes pay for systems sustenance in programs like like Social Security. So with all of that as a setup, the question becomes, what are the implications and ultimately what are the cures for population declines? And I can only reference global and regional numbers, but my focus and the focus of our firm and of our clients are on what are the local and regional implications of it all. But the regional implications are pretty clear. We know that businesses suffer when they can't either sustain their employment populations or find new employees. And when you have a region like San Diego, or for that matter, coastal Orange County or coastal Los Angeles or the Bay Area, you have regions that are now experiencing a net decline in people, primarily catalyzed by high out-migration levels, domestic out-migration levels, for people that are leaving the coast to go either inland California or to other states like Arizona, Nevada, Texas, other places, to find ways to reduce their cost of living. And that usually means lower housing costs, for reasons that usually have to do with the fact that they need housing to accommodate new families. So if those sort of family-centric populations or cohorts or segments of our populations are leaving, there are implications to that, to businesses. And these businesses, we know because we've taken surveys, business owners and CEOs tell us that they have a really rough time retaining the kind of employees that they need for frontline businesses, for manufacturing. And we know the same thing is true in public services. We hear forever that we can't attract enough policemen, despite the fact that they get paid pretty well. They leave because of, really, frankly, the same kinds of issues. So there are business implications which domino throughout our regional economy. Ultimately, that ends not in a very good place. It either ends in a declining metropolitan area, and my reference point is always the old Sunbelt cities like the Detroits and Clevelands and Toledos and Pittsburghs, which enjoy spots of recovery here and there in their CBDs, but as metropolitan areas, as regions, they continue to fail because they've had net decline of people, because their companies don't grow there, or they move out for reasons that are different than in Southern California, but they move out. And so we can see how that play ends. And that's the kind of thing that we don't want to have in communities like San Diego. We want to encourage continued population growth. We've seen declines over the past few years. The blip that we saw over the last year, where we had a decline of 31,000 people, was the biggest decrease of people as a result of net out-migration. But it's part of a long-term trend where our overall regional size of 3.2 or 3 million people is gradually reducing. And that really needs to be stopped, or we need to, better yet, we need to reverse it, because not only does this have implications in terms of our businesses that, as I say, domino throughout the economy, but has huge implications in terms of our overall regional economics, both public and private. Our economy is not sustainable by tourism alone, or by successes in certain categories, such as life science or high technology, which has been good for this region. It's sustainable by the ability of businesses and manufacturers to continue to work here and grow here. On the public side, the implications of public services are just dire. The inability to continue to feed public treasuries so that cities and the county can continue to provide services to its taxpayers, to its citizens, are really very significant. Anywhere from potholes to schools to public security, fire, police. All these things are on the sort of the budget axe in our region and certainly in our state. And the problem is that if we don't sort of address that now, the problems are only going to get worse, particularly that we're seeing the combination of outmigration and lower fertility rates all contributing to lower population levels in our region. So with that all sort of a negative setup, what is the cure? Obviously, the cure is to hope that the trend changes. In other words, that we somehow see fertility rates increase. That's a long-term upside if that ever should happen. I don't think we should hold our breath for that. Or we start to do things that affect this outmigration pattern. The most important thing that we can do is somehow offer up cures for the cost of living. And again, I go straight to housing. And I've talked about this previously and interviewed people previously about the fact that we have to be a lot more creative in terms of how we deliver housing. One of my current rants has to do with the fact that our minimum lot size, particularly in the city of San Diego, but this is pretty much the case throughout other cities in the region, is too high. Even at 5,000 square feet, all we're able to deliver in terms of those same lots are single-family homes. And there are a lot less of those lots available. But what we should do is start to be very creative with that and lower the minimum lot size to 1,000 square feet. And that would create, I think, an opportunity for developers to come in and build a lot more homes, townhomes, row homes on the same size lot. So we can do things like that in terms of offering up housing. We also can start to really hyper focus on the amount of costs and time frame and just a level of bureaucracy associated with getting housing built. On the delivery side, housing developers are habitually inefficient. Most of the housing is stick built. We need to start to create efficiencies like we see in the automobile industry in terms of creating economies of scale for more site delivered housing rather than site built housing. And so it's a combination of both how we build the housing, which we need to focus on, and how we code it, permit it, allow it, politically open up the opportunity for all that. And if we don't do those things, the implications, I think, are fairly dire. Basically, what we're going to have to do is dummy down our economy here in San Diego and other coastal markets. Ultimately, the way this ends is a reduced footprint of our overall population levels, our overall economic levels. And you can go one of two ways. You can either go the way of what I call the boutique economy, which would be characterized by, say, Santa Barbara, which has very wealthy people, and they bring in their workers from other areas who can't afford to live there to work there during the day. Then they long commute to places south like Ventura County to sort of sustain that economy. It's a much smaller economy. So we can go boutique like that, so that San Diego, for instance, becomes a place of the relatively wealthy, the 2%. And somehow we bring our workers in, perhaps from Mexico, perhaps from Riverside County, creating all kinds of other issues associated with traffic congestion, pollution, that sort of thing. Or we can really get a grasp on this relationship between our public policy associated with making it so difficult to build housing here and the need for that housing. So that's an open question, which is sort of a never-ending question that I've had to face over many decades of a career. But the implications are much more serious today because essentially, for instance, in the city of San Diego, we've run out of developable property and we can't build big, large master plans anymore, which accommodate thousands of units because we just don't have that land. The county has that land, but they're not really participating. for a variety of reasons of much of their own making, some of which are CEQA or are environmental related. But in the city of San Diego itself, it's basically landlocked at this point. So the only opportunity is to do infill, and you just can't replace the kind of housing that we need with just infill. So it really becomes a regional issue that the region has to get a handle on. And I think the problem is that there's so many different kinds of decision makers making decisions basically on a short-term basis. They're not looking at the long-term implications, that we really have to sort of change that mindset. And then, of course, the other aspect of this is that immigration policy is something that has to be cured as well. I mean, let's face it, this is still a country, as I started out this monologue, that people want to come into. And we're making it incredibly complicated for people to enter this country, and we don't have to be. Just a little bit of a systemic change, a little bit more money put into creating and enforcing rules and regulations for people coming in. Those kinds of, I think, relatively small political changes could alter the immigration patterns in this country very dramatically. And they're going to continue to be pressure points because climate change is really what's affecting immigration, why people are coming from Central America and South America and other parts of the globe to this country. Some of it's politics and international global tensions, but a lot of it is climate change, that people just can't make a living and in the communities where they're coming from, because farming and agriculture and other basic services are really being torn apart because of inclement weather, heat, and also the concomitant negative implications of all of that. So with that, I will stop. This is a thought piece. I hope it's interesting to all of you, and I will see you soon.